So I'm going to take a break from all the beer reviews that I've been putting on my channel for most of this year and get to something that several people that I know in real life have asked me about. I've had relatives ask me about, and that's kind of The Last Jedi and whether I'm going to see it or all the like, as well as The Last Jedi's drop in ticket sales over this past weekend. So some people say, well, you might be listening and say, well, but your channel's not really about Star Wars. And that's true. And it isn't. There are some Star Wars videos out there. But basically, why do I make some of these videos? And this one I'm doing, I'm not doing any camera work. It's all audio with a bunch of other things. And it's very different for my channel. And in part, it goes back to not The Last Jedi, but The Force Awakens. So 2 years ago, all I heard was how great a movie The Force Awakens was. And my children had gone to see it. My son wanted to see it with me. And so Christmas Eve day, which I don't know, because it was a Saturday or Sunday. I forget which. It was a weekday. It doesn't matter. It could have been a Tuesday for all I know. I had the day off, so to me it was a virtual weekend. And the only thing I knew going in was how great a movie this was. And how then Han Solo died. I didn't know by when or by whom or how. That's all. I knew either he or Chewie died, and I had to know, and that's the only spoiler I allowed myself to do. I had no idea that Mark Hamill only shows up in the very end, and Carrie Fisher's usage is kind of minor. And I went in with all expectations. I grew up with the original trilogy. I got most of my Star Wars toys in '78 because that's when they were actually available. Christmas, they got overloaded. This whole idea of merchandising was there, but it wasn't the scale that movie generated. I did have a $6 Million Man lunchbox at one time, emergency lunchbox. Somewhere that $6 Million Man lunchbox still exists with a bunch of army men in it. So that the concept of merchandising wasn't foreign. You had Charlie's Angels, you had MASH, you had all kinds of other things, mostly TV shows, because TV shows, you saw them every week. You saw them over the course of several years, and even popular movies didn't play in theaters for years upon end. They played a lot longer than they do now, but the TV shows where a lot of merchandising was. And you had some Planet of the Apes and some other things from the early 70s, but all in all, it wasn't at the scale. Star Wars was more, if PG-13 existed, Star Wars would have been PG-13 in my view. The target audience was your young adult, teenager boys, males who liked to go to the theater and see Sinbad. So me being 9 years old, I was kind of at the really low end of that marketing campaign. And Star Wars became a phenomenon in the culture, something that can't be repeated, although there's been many attempts to do so. So I grew up with the original series and loved them. I saw Empire Strikes Back first because my mom didn't let me see Star Wars in '77. I saw it on re-release. And then when Return of the Jedi came out, we just couldn't wait to go see it. And unfortunately, I had most of that movie spoiled by choice because I was just too anxious to know what happened. There was lots of rumors, lots of leaks, and most of them, turned out to be garbage and misinformation and probably people just making stuff up to have something to write. Kind of like what we have now with all the fanboy videos for 2 years because you got to keep feeding the monster. So, the prequels, really, I saw the first one in theaters and was really disappointed. I didn't really like where George was going. Now, a lot of people complain about the CGI. What they don't understand in the prequel trilogy is the CGI is not what you think. They built many miniatures. In fact, there are more miniatures built for, I think it's the second movie, than the Phantom Menace and the Attack of the Clones, all that, than the entirety of the original trilogy. And they digitized these things. Now, when I look at a lot of making videos, what I see are miniatures that are not painted. They may have some shading applied to them, but for the most part, they're gray or they're brown, and I think they're digitally colored in, and that might be part of what people are seeing as the effects. And then the Clone War, all those soldiers and everything, those were all CG, unfortunately. And they're all clones of one person, which I think is kind of silly, but whatever. But I just didn't like the way George was taking, he was echoing the old one too much. It was too much like the original trilogy. Luke's path and Anakin's path, too similar. Anakin's path, starts a bit lower class. He's a slave. And I was like, and a little kid. And I'm like, no, this too old and all this other nonsense. If you're going to parallel, he's got to start at 19. So it was one of those things that even with the setup that George had, I was willing to, go along for so long. So I was really looking forward to The Force Awakens, saw all the previews, bought all the hype, and then I was completely numb at the end of it. And I came home that day, and I made my own video, because all I had seen is how great this video was. That's all I saw on YouTube. I didn't see a single video that said it was mediocre or bad. I knew it was a soft reboot, and a lot of people in the comment sections for some of the trailers ripped me a new one, and then some for even insinuating that. As I've stated numerous times, I came across an interview with JJ Abrams on the Howard Stern show. I think it was posted in November, but I think the interview was in October. And he basically stated it was a reboot in so many words. So I knew I was right. I just didn't know how much of a reboot and how much of a ripoff it was. Unoriginal, garbage. They got everything wrong about Star Wars. Star Wars was not laser blasts and lightsaber fights. It was about the heroic struggle. And this is what George missed a bit in the prequels, and then he really missed, and it really got missed by JJ Abrams and Disney and company. So I come home, I do my video. I gave it a 7 out of 10 out of complete shock, because I couldn't believe that a Star Wars movie could be worse than the prequels. And I just couldn't handle it. And so I went to a 3-month depression after all that, and found more videos that, I learned what a Mary Sue was, and I came across various channels that I ended up subscribing. And I got people looked at my content in general, and even if you look at the comments section, there are claims that I'm clickbaiting and all this, and it was like, you missed the whole reason my channel exists. Now, I got into YouTube, making YouTube videos as a marketing idea for a business venture that I used to do that I was not very successful with, but I liked making videos and I liked getting the feedback. And my channel grew quite rapidly over the course of a few years, had over 500 subscribers at one point, until Google came along and ripped out a bunch of what they claim were dead accounts, and suddenly I lost 200 subscribers in about a week and a half. I never made any money with it. I did have it monetized. I finally got that all set up, and then Google changed it all, and it took me a year to finally get it monetized. I kept reaching out to the Google help desk, and they kept telling me do things, do this, and finally I just started a new account for AdSense and all that stuff. And it still took almost 3 weeks once I had their attention that things weren't right to get it actually working. And it was very frustrating. But it does work now. But I don't make a whole lot of money. So I don't think that this is my livelihood. I mean, as much as I'd like it to be, it isn't. But I digress. So the clickbait claims and learning what a Mary Sue was, and was Rey a Mary Sue, was she not? I came to the conclusion that she was. Now, she wasn't the epitome of a Mary Sue. That really goes back to the original Mary Sue in the Star Trek fan fiction realms. And I did ask. I know a professional author. She has a bunch of books up on Amazon in the e-publishing category. They are vampire type of books, and quite gory and sexually oriented. But I explained she's never really saw the Star Wars movie, so I kind of had to give her the hero's journey that Luke took, and how in this one movie she does the whole hero's journey without any help. And not only does she say is she a Mary Sue, but it's typical of the feminism, the modern day feminism, the third wave feminism, which was a term I hadn't heard either until all this stuff. And so then I had to think, what's so special about that? I knew a lot of the feminism back in the 60s was dealing with the sexism, especially the 50s, and women being told all they are good for is to stay home and raise children, but they had other things they could do, and there were some good aspects to that, whether their tactics were good. And then I learned what the third wave is just incredible. And then we have the MGTOW as a reaction to that, all that. And it's just stupid. Postmodernism is just it's a destructive force. It is the dark side. And so I had to say, okay, she is a Mary Sue, maybe an 85% Mary Sue. She does have some struggles. She does get captured. She does miss a couple shots. She does get slightly injured, but you never feel she's in any real danger. And then I started seeing more and more of how it was important to have all this diversity nonsense, even though the diversity was in the original series, and have a female Force user, which we did in the EU. We had Mara Jade, and we've had others. Obviously, the prequels had lots of females, not only female Force users, but lots of Force users from different races, and males and females, and probably something in between depending on the race. So you had a lot of diversity in the fact that there's more than just humanoids in the galaxy. And with the reboot, all we get is more humanoids. The diversity is all around skin tones of humans as opposed to various alien races, and humans are just seen. And it's really, in many ways, it's a slap in the face, even back to Star Trek, and what the concept of diversity that Roddenberry put forward. Even in Enterprise, you have, when they come across this blue alien race, they call everybody pink skins because they're human, because all of our skin is pink. The coloring, the pigmentation we see is below the skin. It's in the dermis layer, and it's the melatonin levels. But everybody's actual skin is pink. I don't care if you're what we call white and what we call brown and black and Asian and red and all that other garbage. Those are just skin tone underneath. But if you were to look at the skin, it's everything pink. But I digress again. So I know I'm bandstanding a little bit here, but soapboxing perhaps. But it's because it just drives me insane. And the whole concept of the 60s was really treat people as, basically look at the fruits of their labor, treat them as humans, as people of equal, and then go from there. If they're jerks, they're jerks. And it doesn't matter what their skin color is or what their background is, And we have a flushing of all that. And now with The Last Jedi, it's just even worse. So my channel grew from just trying to be in a marketing thing to things that I liked. So photography is a thing I liked, and I did some geocaching stuff, and I started watching other photography channels and saying, some things I emulated and some things I did. And then I did a review of a supplement that I took, and that's when I got huge reviews. I mean, I think that one was something like 38,000 or something crazy. I did a thing about HDI photography with my daughter I think it was my old, I've been in my D7000. On her flip camera, we can't focus. She's talking back, and a lot of people left really bad comments, but I got a lot of views. And so I started to put things out, and some were marketing, some were not, some were very personable. I started doing a few beer reviews. I did some tea reviews. I did some other stuff. And for a while, just kind of floated around in obscurity. And then I had some people say, hey, why don't you do more beer reviews? Or what about this supplement? Or what about this? And so I started doing more of that last year, and then this year it really exploded with a lot of other, I did more than 100 beer reviews in 1 year, which is quite incredible. And so that's why there's a lot of beer reviews one after another in the video, because and then I got busy with other stuff and didn't have time to do a lot of side videos. So I'm doing this one, and we'll see how well it goes. And I've did some other Star Wars videos this year and last year, some of which I've allowed out, some of which I just, maybe I will release them eventually. To me, they were just too cringeworthy. But, when I looked at The Last Jedi, everything I saw said this is Empire 2.0. And when Rian Johnson was really, really protesting, he protested way too much. I'm like, dude, thou doth protest too much. And sure enough, it's not only Empire, it's Empire kind of in reverse with a little bit of Jedi thrown in, which is exactly what I got when the first official trailer came out. I'm like, this is just Empire with a little bit of Jedi. Again, people flame me saying, no. And I've not seen anything of Rian Johnson, so I can't really judge him from his work, but he didn't have a big resume, but neither did Lucas. But Lucas was doing his vision. He wasn't doing someone else's work like these gun-for-hire directors are now. These are all Disney films that they're asked to do. This isn't, hey, I want to make an epic trilogy. This is what I want to see. Unlike what Lucas did in the original series and in the prequels to many ways. But he had really great support back in the 70s and early 80s, and in the prequels he didn't, and that's why they're so bad in my opinion, that he didn't have people that say no, and that was a mistake. Too many yes men, and we get this crap product. But it can't be understated, this drop from weekend 1 to weekend 2. Now, weekend 1 is also longer than that weekend, because that really came out 2 days earlier worldwide than it did in the States. It came out, I think, on a Thursday in the States. So there's some of that monkey business going along. But It's the largest drop in cinematic history, not just Star Wars history. It's the largest drop in cinematic history, especially by dollar amount, 150 some odd million. Now, it still made a crap ton of money, and it's still going to make more. Now, will it hit $1 billion or not? I don't know. I don't know what kind of legs I've got going on. It's got going on. But as we started seeing the audience score drop, and we talked about it on the Fancast several times 2 weeks ago, I even said it's only significant if we see a big drop. Now, I knew we'd see a drop. The Force Awakens saw a big drop, but it didn't see that big a drop from weekend 1 to weekend 2. And there are a lot of apologists going out there and saying, well, what's it mean? What's it mean? But IGN's got, this is made, I think Forbes magazine has talked about this. This is all over the internet right now, and that's not good. And now you have Disney execs even hinting that perhaps they think the Solo film, I don't want to say it will lose money, but compared to all the other Star Wars films, it's going to be a bomb. I mean, we got Rogue One, which was horrid. I did 2 videos about Rogue One and before I ever saw it, and I finally watched it during the summer, and I laughed so hard. I had to pause a couple times because I was laughing so hard. It was so cringeworthy. And people say it's not a comedy, but it is a comedy. Go watch a real war movie. Go watch The Longest Day. Go watch Kelly's Heroes. Go watch The Dirty Dozen, which they compared it to. Go watch Big Red One. Go watch Saving Private Ryan, and then watch that movie, and you will see how hard it tries to be a serious war movie. Now, how much of that was in the original Gareth had, and how much of it was in the reshot fiasco that it became. But, we didn't ask for these in-between movies. This is just Disney grabbing at money and pushing marketing. But already we saw this summer, the sales of the toys started to drop off. And I remember seeing 50% off back in October on the brand new merchandise, the new figures for the new movie. I believe it was a Washington Post, not Washington Post, New York Post or New York Times. Somebody did an article blaming Star Wars, the glut of Star Wars toys, for the glut in the lack of toy sales in general. So there was a lot of undercurrent before this movie came out. Rotten Tomatoes then had to defend all their stuff, saying this is real and it's great. So now that we see a huge drop off, I'm saying this is not insignificant. And this is, I think, a sign of things to come. The Solo film is a dumpster fire. They really decided to hit the eject button. We're going to get another female protagonist who's going to be the real hero. Solo's just going to be a cuck. I mean, this is what they did in The Last Jedi. Any man that likes The Last Jedi, I'm sorry, but you don't have any balls. You don't have any nuts. You just got them, somewhere locked in a box. There's no way you can have any amount of testosterone running through your veins and not be insulted that every male in this movie is an idiot, a jerk, a moron, a bad guy, a screw up. There's no hero in this that is male. And that is horrid. That's a really bad sign. People say, well, it's the original. Bull crap. We had a female hero in the original. Yes, there were a lot more men, but you look at the time when it was done to, look at the militaries of the world, didn't have a lot of females. Princess Leia, I think, was always a latent force user. This is why she's able to resist Vader. She stands up to Vader, goes toe-to-toe with Tarkin like nobody else in the movie. No other person stands up to those two characters. Those that do in the Empire get choked to death. So don't tell me we didn't have a strong female in the original. That is lame. She did have to do her own journey, and that was because she was strong. She didn't believe she could have love. Right? She was the leader. She thought she needed to be isolated, and then by the end of the movie, she realizes she can be a leader and still have a heart and still find romance. And that is a strong, strong message to females that you can have both, and men too. Men don't have to just sacrifice their entire career, selves to have for a career, have a family, and not be a father, right? So, which is kind of what we get in The Force Awakens, where Solo apparently doesn't learn that lesson and goes off, and he's an absentee father, and it's horrid and everything else. So I'm glad that there's lots of executive meddling. I'm glad, I don't think I'm going to ever see the only way I'd see this movie is if I could see it without giving Disney money. So whatever that means, if that means a rip, if that means waiting for the DVD and someone else to buy it and I borrow it, anything like that, I'm not going to rent it from Netflix or Redbox, maybe Redbox, where if it was $1. But this is just, this is in turmoil and it's great and this is the way it needs to be. And Disney, you have done this to yourselves. You are doubling down on this. This is third wave feminism is about the destruction of masculinity. And that's exactly what we're seeing. This is why I'm saying if you're a male and you like this movie and you think it's the best one since the original trilogy, your masculinity is checked at the door. I'm sorry to be that blunt, but you are. And if you can't see the pro-feminist message in the originals, then you're probably also blind. And this is what I'm saying. All right. Bye.